I swear that I will endure being burned, chained, whipped, and killed by the sword. You think you already know this. You can probably picture it. The crowd, dust, blood, a hand with the thumb pointing down, and the man falling. But I want to ask you this. What if you don't know any of them? What if you don't know what that thumb really means? What that man is eating? Or why, despite being offered freedom 4 times, he came back? Do you have no idea? Hollywood sold you a show. We'll explain the system to you. 264 BC, the Roman Forum. Decimus Junius Brutus has recently lost his father, and he wants a funeral befitting his father. 3 pairs, 6 men. They draw their swords against one another. No one calls this entertainment that day. This is an offering, a bloody gift presented to a departed spirit. But there are things in human history that start small but grow uncontrollably. The Punic Wars begin. They push against Rome's borders, and politicians discover something. Blood brings votes. In 65 BC, Julius Caesar, still a young praetor, sends exactly 320 pairs of gladiators into the arena at the same time. This is no longer a funeral. This is an election campaign. And thus a religious ritual is transformed into Rome's greatest political weapon. The games are now funded by the state. Months of preparation go into them, and hundreds of thousands of people watch with bated breath. For the gods? Perhaps once upon a time. But now? No. Now this is how the empire governs itself. So how did you end up here? You're a prisoner of war, or a convict, or, surprising but true, someone who knocked on the door of their own free will. To become a gladiator, you must take an oath. The oath is called the Sacramentum Gladiatorium. I swear that I will endure being burned, chained, whipped, and killed by the sword. The moment you step into Ludus, your old identity is thrown away. Your old name, your old face, your old life. Like a beehive, every cell is accounted for. Every corridor serves a purpose. There is a sandy ground in the center. There are wooden posts, called palace, and around it, iron-barred cells. But pay attention to this. The Lanista's room, the school's administrator and owner, is above everything else. It's positioned so he can see everything. This architectural design aimed not only to establish spatial relationships, but also to minimize the likelihood of rebellion by maintaining a constant sense of surveillance, control, and psychological pressure. There were 4 major schools in the heart of Rome. Ludus Magnus, with a capacity of about 2,000. Ludus Dexicus, for prisoners brought back from the Dacian Wars. Ludus Gallicus, for heavily armored gladiators. Ludus Matutinus, for those who would fight wild beasts. And beneath them all, secret tunnels leading to the Colosseum. Gladiators never went out into the streets to reach the arena. They came from underground, as if they were bursting out of the ground. 5 in the morning, the doors open. The sun hasn't risen yet, but roll call is underway. This ritual is not just about establishing discipline. Did anyone get sick during the night? Did anyone try to escape? A head count is taken. The inventory is checked. Because here, you are not a human being. You are an asset that has been invested in. Breakfast at 6, barley porridge and water. Just enough to keep the body alive. From 7 until noon, weapons training, wooden swords, heavy poles, sweat, and dust. From noon to 1 p.m., siesta. You heard right? a nap. Because Roman military science knew this, there is no strength without rest. From noon until 7, training specific to their own combat class. And this is where it gets interesting, because gladiatorhood wasn't just about fighting well. Being a retiarius was different. Net, javelin, dagger. Agility was everything. Being a murmillo was different. Massive shield, heavy armor, raw strength. Every fighter had his own doctor, his own trainer. And these trainers were usually had won in the arena years ago, earned their freedom, and chosen to return and teach. Dinner at 7, a little free time, and at this hour, men who might have to kill each other tomorrow sit together, talk, and joke around. This paradox is one of the greatest mysteries of life in the Ludus. 157 AD. A young doctor is appointed chief physician at the Gladiator School in Pergamon. His name is Claudius Galenus. You know him as Galen, the greatest physician of the ancient world, one of the fathers of modern medicine. And the most important lessons of his career will come from the wounded bodies of gladiators. Performing dissections on human cadavers was forbidden by both religious and legal standards during this period. But a severely wounded gladiator, a lacerated abdomen, a severed muscle, a shattered joint, was something else entirely for Galen. He described this as bodies with windows, vivid, clear, and accessible. Thanks to the years Galen spent at this school, revolutionary discoveries were made regarding the nervous system, vascular anatomy, and muscle mechanics. And it should be noted, during Galen's tenure, gladiator deaths decreased significantly. This success would take him to Rome, to the side of Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Gladiator medicine was the most advanced trauma surgery center of the ancient world. Not war, but those who learned from war. Now let me tell you Hollywood's biggest lie. Those rock-hard abs, those zero body fat percentages, those muscular, lean, tanned bodies, completely false. A cemetery was discovered in the ancient city of Ephesus in modern-day Turkey, dating from the 2nd century BCE to the 3rd century CE, real gladiators. Researchers from the Medical University of Vienna and the University of Bern conducted isotope analysis on these bones. And the results shook the scientific world. The gladiators were almost entirely vegetarian. Low-quality barley, fava beans, oats, millet, meat, extremely rare. For special celebrations. Contemporary Roman sources referred to them derisively as hordery, barley eaters. But you understand, this isn't an insult, it's actually a secret. Consuming high amounts of carbohydrates on a regular basis creates a thick layer of subcutaneous fat in the body, especially in the abdominal and chest areas. And this layer of fat served as natural armor in the arena. Superficial cuts from the opponent's sword would be absorbed by this tissue. Nerves, blood vessels, and vital organs were protected. The crowd would see blood, they would see savagery, but the gladiator was still standing. For the lanista, that was more than enough, because the lanista's true fear was this: losing the man he had spent years training. There is an economic logic to this diet. This diet has a biomechanical logic, and they devised this in the 2nd century BCE. But there's another side to the story. A diet based solely on barley and beans leads a body undergoing intense training into calcium deficiency. Bones weaken, cramps set in, fractures heal slowly. So what did the bone analysis in Ephesus reveal? The gladiators' bone density was significantly higher than that of the general population. The strontium levels in their bones were abnormal. They were unusually high. How was this possible? There was a mysterious drink mentioned in Pliny's records. He called it the ash drink. Researchers have figured out what it was. The ashes of hardwoods like oak or beech, or the ashes of bones, mixed with high-quality wine vinegar. And that's where chemistry comes into play. The acetic acid in the vinegar converted the calcium, magnesium, and strontium into a bioavailable form that the body can absorb quickly. Today, elite athletes drink isotonic beverages after competitions. They take magnesium calcium tablets or isonic sports drinks. The Romans, 2,000 years ago, had solved the same problem using the same biochemical logic. It was infamous for its bad taste, but it was said to heal broken bones at an incredible speed. This is no coincidence. It's a system. Now let's get to that scene. You know, the defeated warrior lies on the ground. The victor stands over him. The crowd makes its decision. Thumb down, death. Thumb up, live. Isn't that right? No, completely wrong. Professor Anthony Courbet, an expert on the classical period, has spent years studying ancient sources such as Pliny, Juvenal, and Quintilian. And he has revealed that, in the visual language of ancient Rome, the gesture symbolizing the drawing of a sword from its sheath was the thumb extended upward. In other words, thumbs up equals draw the sword, kill. The sign of mercy, however, was to make a fist forming a fist. Polis's premiere, the thumb pressed down. Sheathe your sword, let him live. An ancient medallion found in Nimes, southern France, visually confirms these gestures. Today, the thumbs-up symbol used on social media was a sign of bloodshed in the ancient Roman arena. Think about that. Another myth. Every fight is a matter of life and death. True? Researchers examined tombstones, contract records, and epigraphic data. The overall gladiator mortality rate in the 1st century. Approximately 1 in 9. 1 in 9. The economic reason for this is extremely simple. A gladiator's death meant that tens of thousands of sestertii in investment went down the drain for the lanista. That's why gladiator rental contracts were so strict. The organizer was required to pay a massive compensation to the lanista. Fight to the death. This applied only to the most expensive, most exclusive, and rarest spectacles, the kind personally funded by the emperor. When an experienced gladiator was injured or tired, he could raise his finger, and his life was usually spared by both the crowd and the organizer, because that man was worth his weight in gold. Now I'd like to introduce you to a man. His name is Flamma. He played in 34 matches throughout his career, 21 wins, 9 draws, 4 losses. Its value had risen so much that he was offered a wooden sword a full 4 times. You know the wooden sword, Rudy's, was a symbol of freedom. It meant, you may go now. Flamma refused every time. Freedom was offered 4 times. 4 times she said no. At the age of 30, he died in the arena as a gladiator. Flamma was no exception. During the imperial period, approximately half of the gladiators were Roman citizens born free. They had come voluntarily. Bankrupt businessmen, those in debt, soldiers discharged from the army who couldn't adjust to civilian life, those seeking fame, and even some senators and even nobles entering the arena during Nero's reign. By the time of Marcus Aurelius, things had gone so far, the emperor was forced to set a cap of 12,000 sestertii, because gladiators had begun demanding astronomical fees. This was not a world for the desperate. It was an extremely risky career choice. The night before the fights, a public feast was held for all the gladiators. Cena libera, the free feast. For men who had eaten nothing but barley for months, roasted wild boar, spicy sausages, seafood, honeyed wines, figs. Things only the aristocracy could access. But the doors to this night were open to the public, and those who came fell into 2 groups. The first, gamblers. In ancient Rome, there was a massive betting economy. These people analyzed the body language of the men at the table. Is he eating calmly? Are his hands shaking? What's in his eyes? If a gladiator ate the food in front of him with confidence, odds would change instantly. Second, the philosophers. Stoic and Epicurean thinkers were there to observe the true nature of a person who would face the searing reality of death within a few hours. Is he filled with fear? Has he accepted it? Has he surrendered? Or is he at peace? This was the ancient world's living psychology laboratory. Plutarch wrote, "Even if the arena is magnificent, many gladiators, knowing they might die the next day, found it hard to touch the food." One of Rome's greatest religious fears was this: to die nameless, without ritual, alone. The souls of those who died this way, lemures or larvae, were believed to be unable to find peace and to remain in limbo. The gladiators, on the other hand, had to be buried designated areas, just like prostitutes, just like society's outcasts. That is why they established collegia, mutual aid societies, burial clubs, insurance funds. They paid dues to this fund from every prize they won in the arena. Thus, the body of a brother who died in the arena would not be left unclaimed. The collegia ensured that the deceased man was washed and his name carved into stone, along with the number of victories he had won. These gravestones, in the very midst of violence, brutality, and dehumanization, are the most tangible archaeological evidence of a human network that continues to stand by one another even after death. One last legend. The arena was a men's club, wasn't it? Look at this relief. It's at the British Museum, brought from Turkey. 2 female warriors, the Amazon and Achillea, fully armed, sword, shield, armor. And the inscription below reads, "They fought to a draw and emerged alive from the arena." Tacitus wrote, Suetonius wrote, Juvenal wrote. All of them described, with astonishment and at times satire, described the fights of female gladiators. And here is the most important evidence. Emperor Augustus was forced to ban noblewomen from entering the arena. In AD 200, Emperor Septimius Severus completely banned women's fights. Why ban them? Because it was very widespread and had come to threaten Rome's conservative family structure. the bands themselves reveal the scale of the practice. When we look at the warriors entering the Ludus Gate, we see not ancient savagery, but a modern system. They had built their muscles using Philostratus's tetrad cycle. They wove their biological armor with pure carbohydrates. They had strengthened their bones with wood ash mixed with vinegar. And with the help of physicians like Galen, they could recover from even the most severe injuries. Isotope analysis, periodization, the principle of overload, electrolyte supplementation, psychological performance. We teach all of this today as modern sports science. The Romans 2,000 years ago, through trial and error, and in a very bloody manner, had reached the same conclusions. And finally, legally speaking, they were nothing. They were notorious figures cast to the margins of society. But when they stepped into the arena, all of Rome held its breath.